Here is the story, clean, simple English, no headings, no violations, written to hold attention from the first line to the last. His name was James Elliot. 26 years old. 7 years in the British Army. 2 tours abroad. 1 posting at Windsor Castle, which most soldiers quietly considered the best duty in the regiment, clean uniform, no gunfire, tourists with cameras instead of enemies with weapons. James had earned it. He was not a complicated man. He followed orders the way other people breathe, without thinking about it, without questioning it. His commanding officer once said James Elliot could stand in a burning building and not move 1 inch unless he was given the order to step back. That was meant as a compliment. James took it as one. Every morning he put on his uniform the same way. Left boot first. Always. He polished the buttons until he could see his own face in them. He adjusted his bearskin hat with 2 hands, perfectly centered, the way his sergeant had shown him on his first day. Then he walked to his post at the east gate of Windsor Castle, planted his feet exactly shoulder-width apart, and became something close to a statue. That was his job. Stand. Be still. Do not speak. Do not react. Do not engage. Simple. He was good at it. The morning of November 14th started like every other morning. Cold air. Gray sky. The kind of London chill that gets into your collar and stays there. A few tourists gathered near the gate with their phones raised. A school group arrived with matching yellow jackets and a teacher who kept counting heads. A woman walked a very small dog that had no business being that confident. James stood still. He watched without appearing to watch. That was the real skill nobody talked about. Your eyes kept moving while your face stayed frozen. You noticed everything. The men who lingered too long near the fence. The child who got separated from the group. The woman who dropped her bag and then looked around too carefully before picking it up. James noticed all of it. At 9:47 in the morning, he noticed an elderly woman on the far side of the footpath. She was small. White coat. Blue handbag. She was walking slowly, the way people walk when they are being careful about every step. She had a slight curve to her back. Her white hair caught the gray morning light. James watched her out of the corner of his eye. She stopped near the stone wall about 30 meters from his post. She put one hand on the wall. She stood like that for a moment, just resting, he thought. People stopped to rest near that wall all the time. Then her knees went. Not dramatically. Not like in the films where someone collapses with a loud gasp and arms flying wide. It was quiet. One moment she was standing. The next moment she was on the ground, sitting against the wall, her blue handbag tipped over beside her, its contents spread across the cold stone path. Nobody stopped. 3 people walked past her. One man looked down at her and kept walking. A young couple saw her from a distance, looked at each other, and turned in the other direction. James watched all of this. He stood perfectly still. The rules were clear. A sentry does not leave his post. A sentry does not interact with members of the public unless there is a direct security threat. A sentry does not engage, does not speak, does not move from his assigned position without a direct command from a superior officer. These rules existed for good reasons. James knew all the reasons. He had memorized them. He believed in them. He stood still. The woman on the ground put her hand to her chest. That was the moment. James did not make a decision, exactly. It did not feel like a decision. It felt more like something slipping, the way a coin slips from your hand before you can grip it tighter. 1 second he was at his post. The next second his boots were moving across the stone path and he was covering the 30 meters between himself and the old woman before any thought caught up with him. He crouched down beside her. "Ma'am." His voice came out low and steady. "I am here. Can you hear me?" She looked up at him. Her eyes were pale blue and very clear. She was not confused. She was frightened, but she was completely aware of where she was and what was happening. "My chest," she said. "I feel very strange." "Stay still," James said. "I am going to get help." He stood up. He turned toward the small group of tourists who had now gathered a respectful distance away, the way people do when they want to watch something without appearing to want to watch it. "Someone call an ambulance," he said. Not a shout. Not a plea. A clear, direct instruction. A young man in a red jacket immediately pulled out his phone. James crouched back down beside the woman. He picked up the things that had fallen from her handbag, a small coin purse, a folded piece of paper, a packet of throat lozenges, and placed them gently back inside. He set the bag beside her. "What is your name?" he asked. "Margaret," she said. "Margaret." He said it like it was the most normal thing in the world. "The ambulance is coming. You are going to be fine." She looked at him. Then she looked at his uniform. The red tunic. The tall bearskin hat. The polished buttons. "You are not supposed to be here," she said. "No," James said. "I am not." She made a small sound that was almost a laugh. He stayed beside her until the paramedics arrived. 7 minutes. He talked to her the whole time, about nothing in particular. The weather. The tourists. The very small dog he had seen earlier, which had been walking like it owned the entire street. Margaret laughed at that. When the paramedics arrived, James stood up, adjusted his hat, walked back to his post, and became a statue again. The tourists stared at him. He did not look at them. He reported himself. That afternoon, at the end of his shift, James walked into his commanding officer's room and said, without any particular emotion, that he had left his post that morning without authorization. He explained what had happened. He explained his reasoning. He said he understood if there were consequences. His commanding officer, a man named Colonel Harris, who had spent 31 years in the army and had the face to prove it, listened to all of this without speaking. When James finished, Harris looked at him for a long moment. "How long were you off post?" Harris asked. "Approximately 9 minutes, sir." "Did anyone breach the gate during those 9 minutes?" "No, sir." Harris looked down at his desk. He picked up a pen and set it down again. "Dismissed," he said. James left. He did not know what that meant. He went home that evening and polished his boots and made himself dinner and did not think about it very much. He had done what he had done. The reasoning seemed clear enough to him. A human being was on the ground. He had the ability to help. He helped. The rest, he figured, was paperwork. 2 days later, James was told to report to a different room. He was not told why. He put on a clean uniform. He polished the buttons again, though they did not need it. He adjusted his hat with both hands. He walked to the room indicated. Prince William was already there. James had seen him before, of course. You cannot work at Windsor Castle for any length of time without seeing the senior royals. But seeing someone from a distance across a courtyard and standing in the same small room as them are two entirely different things. James stood very straight and said nothing. Prince William was not in a formal uniform. He was in civilian clothing, dark trousers, a simple jacket, the kind of thing that would make him look like any other tall man in his 40s if you did not already know who he was. He was looking at a sheet of paper when James entered. He looked up. "Corporal Elliot," he said. "Your Royal Highness," James said. Prince William set the paper down. He looked at James with the kind of directness that made you feel like the room had gotten smaller. "I heard what happened on the 14th, he said. "Yes, sir," James said. "I also heard that you reported yourself afterward." "Yes, sir." Prince William was quiet for a moment. Not an uncomfortable silence. Just a thinking silence. "Why did you report yourself?" he asked. James considered this. It was a genuine question, and it deserved a genuine answer. "Because the rule I broke is a real rule," James said. "It exists for real reasons. I did not want to pretend I had not broken it." Prince William nodded slowly. "And why did you leave your post?" "Because she was on the ground," James said. "And no one else was stopping." Another silence. Prince William picked up the piece of paper from the desk and looked at it again. Then he set it down and extended his hand. James shook it. "There is a version of duty," Prince William said, that is about following every instruction to the letter, no matter what is in front of you. And then there is a version of duty that is about understanding why those instructions exist in the first place. He paused. You understood both versions. And you chose correctly. James did not know what to say to that, so he said nothing. Margaret is recovering well, Prince William said. Her family wants me to thank you. James nodded once. She told the paramedics that a guard stayed with her and talked to her about a small dog, Prince William said. There was something in his voice that was not quite a smile but was close to one. She said it was the most reassuring thing anyone had ever said to her. James felt something shift in his chest that he did not have a name for. She has a good sense of humor, James said. Yes, Prince William said. She does. Later, people would make a larger story out of it than it was. There were photographs someone had taken from a distance, grainy phone images of a royal guard in full uniform crouched beside an old woman on a cold stone path. Those photographs moved around the internet for a while. People wrote things about them. Some people wrote that it proved something about duty. Some people wrote that it proved something about kindness. Some people wrote things about the British royal family. Some people wrote things about whether the rules for royal guards should be changed. James did not read any of it. He was not interested in being a symbol of anything. He was a soldier who had left his post for 9 minutes to sit beside an old woman named Margaret and tell her about a small confident dog, because she was frightened and alone and no one else was stopping. That was the whole story, as far as he was concerned. He still put his left boot on first every morning. He still polished the buttons until he could see his own face in them. He still adjusted his hat with 2 hands, perfectly centered. And every morning when he walked to his post and planted his feet and became something close to a statue, he carried with him a very quiet, very ordinary thing that most people never think to carry into a long day of standing still. He knew what he was standing for. Not just the gate. Not just the castle. Not just the crown on the flag above it. He was standing for the idea that rules are not the same thing as judgment. That discipline without conscience is just performance. That sometimes the most soldierly thing a soldier can do is recognize the exact moment when the manual runs out of answers, and then act like a human being. Prince William had shaken his hand and called it choosing correctly. James just called it knowing what matters. Margaret sent him a letter 3 weeks after she left the hospital. It was handwritten on pale yellow paper in careful, slightly shaky cursive. She thanked him for staying with her. She said the paramedics told her that the calm manner in which someone had spoken to her had almost certainly helped keep her heart rate steady during the most critical minutes. At the bottom of the letter, in slightly larger letters than the rest, she had written, "I have told everyone about the dog." James folded the letter and put it in the drawer of his bedside table. He left his post once. He has never regretted it.